Welcome to the demonstration for configuring and managing indexes. This demonstration reinforces the concepts covered in Lesson 11 of the Enterprise Vault 10 for Exchange Administration course. In this demonstration, we will review the steps involved in configuring and managing indexes, including the Index Volumes browser. The sections included in this demonstration are configuring indexes, reviewing indexing options and features, and using the Index Volume browser. In this section of the demonstration, we will use the Enterprise Vault Administration Console to examine and apply all the settings necessary to ensure proper operation of indexing. We're going to start off by looking at the server cache. So I'll expand my Enterprise Vault servers, go and open up the property page for my server, select Properties, go to the Cache tab, and you can see that the server-side cache has been configured. We've done this in an earlier demonstration as part of setting up and turning on the indexing service. But the indexing service will not start when you're installing Enterprise Vault or configuring it until you've had the cache location set and configured. So go ahead and cancel out of this. And now we want to go and look at the properties of the indexing indexing service. So I'll expand my Enterprise Vault server, select my services, open up the properties of the Enterprise Vault indexing service, select Properties, and here you can see it gives you the site information computer, the description, also shows you the index metadata location. We'll come back and look at that again here in a moment. And it also has a listing of the current index locations. And by default, it creates 8 index locations, which we had done in an earlier lesson, which again is something that needs to be done prior to starting up the indexing service. We will show you here in a moment in this lesson where you could change this so that it won't create 8 indexes by default, but can create only 1 index location. That was a correction. Creating 8 index locations versus creating 1 index location. And we'll show you the setting that does that here in a moment. All right, so go ahead and cancel out of this. And now we're going to go and look at that setting that allows you to determine whether you want to create 8 or 1 index location at a time when you're creating index locations. So we'll go back and open up the properties of our server again. So I click on my EV server, go to Properties, and I'm going to go to the Advanced tab this time. And you can see that it says List Settings From, and our option is Indexing. So we'll scroll down here to find the setting that we're looking for. And the setting that we're looking for is Create Multiple Index Locations. By default, that is set to Yes. And you can see from the description down here that when it is set to Yes, this will create 8 index locations by default. When set to No, the Enterprise Vault will only create a single index location when you're creating index locations under the Services properties. So we could open it up here, and this is how you would change it. You would select either Yes or No, and we'll just go ahead and leave it at Yes. And go ahead and cancel out of here again. Now what we're going to do is an example of a task that you may have to do as an administrator, which is to use the indexing metadata location. And the indexing metadata is new to Enterprise Vault 10 as part of the new indexing engine. So we're going to go ahead and check that location again. So I'll go to my Enterprise Vault indexing service. And open up the Properties page. And we'll see here that it has the index metadata location. And we can see that it's under D Program Files, Enterprise Vault, EV Indexing. But some of it is crossed off there. So go ahead and click in there and scroll over and see that it's under EV Indexing Data Index Metadata. So what we want to do is we want to move this folder to a different location. And again, this may be because that location is becoming full, or we've got something where the device that we're using is going to be better. The newer device is better, so we want to move it onto that better device. So the first thing I need to do is to cancel out. I need to stop the indexing service prior to moving the metadata location. So we'll right-click on that and select Stop. You can see it goes to Stop Pending. And again, for the demonstration here, we've kind of time compressed it. So it will ultimately go to stopped. And once it is stopped, we'll go ahead and close our Vault Administration console. And we will go to the location and copy it to a new location. So I'll open up my Windows Explorer. We saw that the original location was on the D drive under the Program Files x86 folder, under the Enterprise Vault folder, under EV Indexing, and under Data. So now we're down to the folder that we want you to copy to the new location. So go ahead and right-click on that and select Copy. And now we need to go to the new location. So I'll go to my E drive and create a new folder here. So go to New and Folder. And then we'll change the name to EV Indexing. And then once we've got the new name, we'll go ahead and open up that folder. And we'll do a right-click and select Paste. And we get the status that we are in fact copying the files over. And now we've moved it to its new location under the E drive EV Indexing. So now we have to go back to the indexing service metadata and change that location. So we'll go ahead and open up our Vault Administration console again, open the properties of the Enterprise Vault Indexing service. So select Properties. And then for our index metadata location, we'll click our Browse button. And here it tells you that we still left it in its original location. So are you sure that you've moved the metadata to the new location before you change its value? And we know we have moved it to its new location. So we can go ahead and say yes here. It does prompt you for the service account password. So we'll type in the service account password. Then we can click OK. And then we get a browser so we can expand our E, expand our EV indexing, and select our index metadata folder. Then we click OK, and then we click OK a second time. And now what we need to do is start the indexing service. So we'll come up to our Enterprise Vault Indexing service, right-click on that, and select Start. You can see it goes to Start Pending. And then again, we've time compressed this a little bit, and it will switch over to Running. Now the next thing we want to look at, or the next section of the demonstration, we will familiarize ourselves with some important indexing options and features that are accessible from within the Enterprise Vault Administration console, including the Index Volume Browser. So the first we're going to do is go and look at our default indexing level at the site level. So we'll select our EV site. We'll open up our properties. So we'll select Properties. And then we have a tab for indexing. And again, this is new for Enterprise Vault 10 to have a separate tab for setting the indexing level. It used to be in a different location in Enterprise Vault 9. You can see that when we originally configured everything, we had set it to be full, and we have a preview length of 128 characters. So we're going to go ahead and leave that setting. But we're also going to show or remind ourselves that we can change the indexing level at the archive level. So we'll go ahead and cancel out here. And we'll select our archives, expand them out. Select our Exchange Mailbox archives. And we're going to change Graham Smith's indexing level. So if I right-click on Graham Smith here, select Properties. And again, we have the indexing tab. And you can see that by default, he was set to full, but we're going to change him to brief. Now again, when we look at it, it talks about the differences between the brief, where the brief indexes just the metadata, and the full indexes the metadata and the content of the archived items. And the reason why we're changing this to brief is so that we can show you with the tools, we can determine when we have indexes that have a mixture of indexing levels. And we'll see that when we go through the tools later in another demonstration. So once we got it changed to brief, we'll go ahead and click OK. And now what we want to do is we want to send some mail messages to Graham and have those archived so that we can get that mixture of both full and brief indexing in the same index volume, so that in a later demonstration we can look at the tools that will show us that we have that functionality, or that we set up that type of indexing in Graham Smith's index. So we'll switch over to the client machine. On my client machine, I'm logged in as A. Tanaka, and what we'll do is we'll send 2 mail messages to Graham. So I'll come over here and click on my new email, and we'll type in our Graham Smith for our 2. For our subject, we'll just type in a generic subject here, and then we'll go ahead and type in a body, and we'll hit our send button. Then we'll go ahead and send that second email. And again, what we're doing here is just sending a couple emails that are going to be indexed with brief, as opposed to all the other items that have been indexed with full. So we end up with a mixed index level in Graham Smith's archive. So again, we'll set the 2 to be Graham Smith. Type in a different subject line. Type in a different body. And then we can hit send. Now, to get the actual indexing to occur, we have to archive those messages. So I'll go ahead and close A. Tanaka's Outlook environment, and we'll log off A. Tanaka and log on Graham Smith. So I click my start, click my arrow to bring up the pop-up to select log off. And again, here in our demonstrations, we're running virtual machines. So I'll go up to my virtual machine and select to send the Control-Alt-Delete command. And we've already hit the switch user button, so I can go ahead and select other user here. Type in the username, which will be example /G Smith. Type in Graham Smith's password and click our arrow to log in. And now we're ready to open up Outlook as Graham Smith. So I'll click my start, select my Microsoft Outlook 2010. And you can see the 2 messages have been received already in the mailbox. So I'll just go ahead and select both of those messages. And then we want to archive them, so we'll come up and click the Enterprise Vault tab of the Office ribbon. Click our Store button or icon on our ribbon. And you can see that the message is switched to Pending Archive. And then again, we've time compressed it a little bit here, but now they have switched over and they are actually shortcuts. So now those 2 items have been archived. And now what we want to do is that, again, this is basically just setting us up for a future demonstration for that mixed indexing level inside of Graham Smith's archive. So we'll go back over to Server 2 and look at some additional indexing properties based upon the archives. So we switch back over to Server 2, which is our Enterprise Vault server. And we have our Vault Administration Console already opened up. And we're going to go to Akito Tanaka's archive here. That's A. Tanaka. And then we'll open up the properties. And now we'll go to the Index Volumes tab. Now in the Index Volume tab, it tells us that we have a 64-bit archive. It is healthy, 1 indexing volume healthy, and none have failed. From here, we could open up the Index Volume browser by clicking Details. We could also start the Manage Indexes tool by clicking the Manage Index Volume section here, and we'll be doing those in a later demonstration. So for right now, we just want to look at the fact that we have a 64-bit index, and in our environment, we have done a clean installation of Enterprise Vault 10, so therefore we have no 32-bit indexes. If we had done an upgrade from Enterprise Vault 9 or an earlier version, we might have some 32-bit index listed here under our platform. So we're going to go ahead and cancel out of this and just take a peek at another user's index volumes. I'll go ahead and cancel out of this. And we're going to go to Chris Johnson's as another example here. Open up the property page. Select properties. Then we go to the index volumes. And again, you can see that it is a 64-bit platform. It is healthy. And again, if there were 32-bit or there were multiple volumes for this particular user's archives, then it would show them here in the list. Now, we don't have multiple index volumes yet because we haven't archived that many items in our test environment for the course here. So we'll go ahead and cancel out of Chris Johnson's archive properties. And we'll go back to Akito Tanaka. And we'll open up the properties and we'll look at what we can see with the index volume browser. So I'll click my properties, go to my index volumes. And again, one of the ways, and we'll see that there's many different ways to open it up, but one of the ways that we can get to the index volume browser is to click the Details tab. And you can see that the index volume browser has opened up for Akito Tanaka. And it's only opened up for that one archive because that archive was selected when we opened the index browser. We'll show you that if we select it from a different location, we can actually have all of the archives and all of their index volumes show up here in our list. So what we want to do is we want to look at some of the different items that are available under our actions group here. So we'll click our drop down for our action groups, and you can see that I can set an index volume online if it was offline, or I can set it offline, which is what we'll do here in a moment. I can copy the information to the clipboard, I can refresh it, or I can go ahead and click the Details button to get more information about the index volume. So let's click the Details and see what information we get. And we can see that for this particular index volume, it tells me the type, tells me if I'm in backup mode, and in a later demonstration we'll talk about placing index volumes in backup mode. It'll talk about what is the index server, and again from our lesson we talked about index server groups, so we may be interested in knowing which index server in an index server group is actually doing the indexing for this volume, where the location of the files are for the indexes, if there's any missing items, what platform we're running on, the range of items in the index volume, the current status, which is online. If there was any tasks operating on this index volume, it would show up here, and it would show me the total number of items in my index right now. So I've got 24 items indexed for Akito Tanaka. So that just gives me, again, more details about my index volumes. So I'll go ahead and click OK to get out of that. And while we're here, so that we can see an example of searching for offline, we've already looked at setting up Graham Smith to be a mixed index environment. We're going to set the Akito Tanaka's mailbox or correction index volume to be offline. So I'll come back to my actions, select the option to set the index volume offline, and here it does get a warning to remind us about taking it offline. It means they can't be updated, but even if they are offline, we can still search them. So we'll go ahead and say yes. And again, we get the little prompt giving us the status of the process. We go ahead and can now see that our status is offline. So now we'll just go ahead and close our index volumes browser. Click close. And now we're back to the property page, so we just go ahead and click OK here. And next we want to look at some additional features that are available with the index volumes browser. And so we'll launch it instead of from an individual archive, we'll be launching it from the indexing section of the Vault Administration Console. So I'll go ahead and expand the indexing section, and then I'll go ahead and select the ungroup or expand the ungrouped servers. And again, we don't have any index server groups because we only have one Enterprise Vault server in our environment, so we didn't meet any of the criteria that we talked about in the lesson for using index server groups, so we'll just have our single ungrouped server. But we can launch the index volume browser from the server properties. So if I right-click on my server, you can see that I have the option of launching the index volumes browser. So we'll go ahead and select that. Once I've got the index volume browser open here, you can see that because I went through the indexing location, that it's automatically listed all the archives that are available for getting information about their index volumes. And I can come up here and change the search criteria from just the archive name to looking for items based upon the index server itself, or being a member of the index server group. And again, we've only at this particular point in time in our environment have a single index server, which means that we don't have any index server groups. So we'll just go ahead and do a search based upon the archive name. So I select my archive name, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to search for Sarah James index volumes. So under the criteria here, we'll type in Sarah James, and we can come down and click our search. And again, notice that for attributes, we do have all the attributes selected for Sarah James archive. Extra items, failed, missing items. Here's the mixed indexing level we were talking about for Graham. We'll be seeing that in a little bit. If they're offline or online. And then also do want to include index volumes that are currently being processed by a task. And we've got all those selected right now. So we go ahead and click search. And sure enough, we do get the Sarah James archive. And we can see the status of the index volumes, which are that they are online, how many items are in the index volume, and if there's anything that is missing from that index volume, which would be an indication of us needing to do a synchronization of that volume to replace those missing items. So it looks like everything is working okay here. So let's do another search using a different criteria. So I'll come over here into my search section and do a clear all. Well, actually, before we do that, let's look at the details for Sarah James archive. So I'll go ahead and open up the action section, go to the details. And again, we can see that we've got the same details for Sarah James that we had for the Akita Tanaka's mail index volume that we looked at earlier. So I can go ahead and click OK to close that out. And now we're ready to go and try to do our new search. So I'll click my clear all option. And the only thing that I want to search for is that mixed indexing level, which means somewhere within the index I have both items that have full indexing set up and items that have brief indexing set up. So I'll go ahead and click my search button. And you can see that I found Graham Smith's archive, which we know that we had in a previous example changed from full to brief on Graham Smith. And we had archived a couple mail messages, so there are items in there that have that brief indexing level. Now we'll come back over and bring up all of our items again. So we'll do a select all. We'll add the check mark to include the items include the index volumes being processed. And then we'll go ahead and click our search to bring them all up again. And you'll notice up here next to the actions, which we've been ignoring so far, we have a group by option. So I can open it up and you can see that by default it's grouped by none. But if I wish, I could group by archive name. And here with the archive names, I got a list of all the archive names. And then in parentheses, I got the number of index volumes that that particular archive name is associated with. And because, again, we haven't done a whole lot of archiving in our test environment, you can see as we scroll down here that each one of the archives only has one index volume currently associated with it. Well, now we're going to go ahead and change the group by from archive name to status. And when we select the status option, you can see that we have 45 online and 1 not yet created. This is an archive where we have the mailbox, but we haven't actually archived anything to that. And we have that because we have the EV service account that has a mailbox, but we haven't actually set it up for indexing. And if it's not the EV service account, it'll be the administrator account. But one of those two accounts, it's not actually archiving anything yet. So that's where we have the 1 not created. We'll go ahead and set it back to see the all. So we'll do our group by none to bring back all of our archives in a list. And then we're going to do a search for our offline index volumes. So we'll do a deselect all. Oh, correction, we'll just go ahead and do a clear all, not the deselect all, clear all. And then we'll select that we're looking for offline index volumes. And then we'll go ahead and click our search. And we can see that the Akita Tanaka's archive is found by the index volumes browser as being one of the offline indexes. So again, So on a regular maintenance kind of an environment, periodically you may want to come into the index volume browser and search for extra items, failed, missing, so that you could go through and do one of the managed index functions of verify or synchronize to try to repair those problems. And we'll show you some examples of that in a later demonstration. So we're going to go ahead and put the Akito Tanaka's mailbox back online. So for our actions, we'll open up our drop-down. You can see that it is offline. So the option to set the index volume online is available now. So we'll select that option. It does give us a informational type of dialog box to tell us that we're placing it back online. And we say, yes, that's what we wish to do. We can see it gives us a status of the process. And then Akito Tanaka is back online again. And then we go ahead and click the close button. This brings us to the end of the demonstration.